Hey, we've been talking about football a good deal over the summer, but it was all about the hypotheticals and the what-ifs. Finally, on the eve of training camp, we actually have some tangible football that we can talk about. Josh, the Gators should be celebrating a huge 21-3 road win over two-time SEC East champion Missouri, but instead now they're wondering about the future now that Will Grier has been served an automatic suspension for failing a drug test for performance-enhancing drugs. And he's got two big tasks on his hand in year one. One is improving the Gators' offense. It just wasn't good enough last year under Donovan. And two, how do you replace the legendary Donovan and put your own brand on this program? The experience that fans receive at the Swamp is second to none in college athletics. But far too often, the 90,000 strong sitting in the stands take for granted the hours and workforce required to make the Swamp, well, the Swamp. So Dante Fowler ends up being the guy for the Jacksonville Jaguars. He's going from Gainesville to Jacksonville. He's going to keep it inside the Sunshine State, and head coach Gus Bradley finally gets that big defensive piece that the Jaguars were looking for.
In Baton Rouge to break it all down for us. Hey, Phil.
Hey, well, try to get out to Baton Rouge. Sometimes life gets in the way. Actually had a plant spill close to Highway I-12 get in the way, so we're going to try to get back out to Baton Rouge tonight. I'm in Louisiana, kind of scenic behind me right here. But talk about this game. Two undefeated teams set to take the primetime stage in Death Valley in Baton Rouge tomorrow night. Now, most figured the LSU Tigers would be in this spot with the success that they have had in recent memory, but not the Florida Gators with the struggles in the last couple of years and ultimately leading to Muschamp out, McElwain in. This season has been a Cinderella story so far for UF, but this week has been anything but, more of the nightmarish variety. But if history is any indication, we'll be in for a special game tomorrow night. Welcome into the Friday Night End Zone. Phil Byrne and Chelsea Brown. And Chelsea, it's my favorite time of the year, the playoffs.
That's right. Teams are putting it all on the line because it's win or go home.
Absolutely. A few big storylines to follow in tonight's action include all the teams in the postseason from right here in Alachua County. Buchholz, GHS, Eastside, and Santa Fe are all in, with Buchholz and Santa Fe at home tonight.
Outside of the county, Columbia and Trenton are looking to go on a long postseason run, and they were also home tonight.
But it's been 19 years in the making. The Santa Fe Raiders won their district for the first time since the 1990s, and their playoff game against South Sumter is tonight's game of the week. The Raider Regiment brings us out to Alachua, where the Raiders had a 12-0 lead entering the second half. Just a few minutes into the third quarter, South Sumter goes to the air, but Isaiah Cromartie jumps the route, and he's headed back the other way. Cromartie gets a couple of blocks, reads them, and takes it back to the house. PAT good, 19-all Santa Fe early in the third. More good defensive play from the Raiders. This is Kayshawn Wakely coming off the edge and coming up with the sack. Check that out. He shows off some good moves too right there. Raiders win and advance 26-0 tonight over South Sumter. Heading north to Columbia County, the Tigers were taking on Tallahassee Childs tonight in 6A action. Things start off rough for CHS out of the gate as Davin Shutt gets his picket pocked by Childs' Chris Reed. Reed headed back the other way, gets about 35 yards off the INT. The visitors looking to strike early. Quarterback Landon Simpkins has John Mitchell open upfield, but his pass just off target. That would have been 6 right there. Columbia stomps Childs without getting any points there. Next drive, Camario Bell powers his way upfield to move the sticks on third down. Chuck evades pressure, rolls out, finding the wide open Michael Jackson. Talk about a thriller. Jackson takes it to the house, but wait, a holding penalty brings it back. 2 plays later, that penalty wouldn't matter. Shuck on the play fake, hits Jackson back in the slot, and Jackson will take this one to the house without a flag on the play, so it counts for the game's opening score. Columbia scores a whole lot more. 42-27 Columbia, your final from Lake City. Buchholz Bobcats taking on Orlando Edgewater at Citizens. Edgewater strikes first on a 40-yard touchdown pass to Buck Watkins to put the Eagles up 7-0 early in the first quarter. Bobcats respond. Here's quarterback Jackson White finding a wide open Trent Whittemore for the 4-yard touchdown to even the score at 7. But the Eagles retake the lead on a 2-yard touchdown run by Craig Rucker to put them up 14-7. But again, the Bobcats answer. A back-and-forth game. This one certainly was. This is an 8-yard touchdown grab by Luke Whittemore again in the corner of the end zone. In the end, Buchholz wins and advances with a 36-27 win.
Kickoffs around the corner. Here's more Gainesville game day.
Well, we've already talked about the defensive line a little bit, and of course, John Bullard has had an outstanding season so far for the Gators. The senior from North Carolina has 41 tackles and 5 sacks, and reminding a lot of people around here of former defensive tackles from yesteryear. Should we be considering him among the best in the country?
Like we talked about Jake McGee, I think he's made a ton of money this year by showing off how good a player he is. You're talking about All-American, you're talking about guys like at Alabama have highlight stuff. And he's made some really nice plays, but I'm not sure he's got that. It's going to be hard enough to be all SEC
with the other guys
in this conference.
And A'Shawn Robinson.
Yeah. I think you've got to at least consider him as an all-conference player. He's really played well and really made that defensive line and the defense as a whole just stand out. So I don't think All-American, because to be an All-American, you almost have to have like multiple sacks. Yeah. I mean, like in double figures and have a fumble return or something like that. But I think all SEC, you definitely have to consider him.
Bullard has provided a nice senior leadership there on that defensive front as well. But anyways, Jim McElwain had an interesting take on the win over Vanderbilt. And he even considered what he did against the Vanderbilt Commodores a crime. Well, find out in this week's Mouth of Mac.
Mouth of Mac, sponsored by the Village at Gainesville.
Probably Calvin, the guy out here, probably going to arrest me on the way out the door for stealing. So I don't blame him. I mean, it ain't like I'm real excited about the performance. Hey, Calvin, stay out there. Don't arrest me while they see me, okay?
And I think LSU and the Mad Hatter at home, I think they're going to have enough to get that win against Arkansas. And of course, that will bring us full circle to Florida Gators on the road in Columbia, South Carolina against the Gamecocks. You don't want to have a letdown game after you only won by 2 points over Vanderbilt at home. I think this is going to be another knockdown slugfest. If one team gets to 20, they're probably going to win it. I think the Gators have the defense to get to 21st. I'm picking the Gators.
Yeah, I'm going to pick Florida too. South Carolina's beaten the SEC East winner 4 of the last 5 years. There's something you can use for motivation, and I know Coach Mack is doing that as well. South Carolina's beaten Florida the last 2 years, and I expect Florida to be in a battle. But I got a feeling Florida's just got enough, especially because South Carolina's defense, even though they've played hard, and they still haven't been very good.
This South Carolina team, they did beat one-loss North Carolina to start the season.
How?
So many things have changed since week 1. That's all we'll leave you with. But of course, that is a very, very impressive win for a team. Other than the last couple of weeks, has been anything but impressive.
I didn't see them in the rankings of South Carolina. Oh, that's right. They're 3 and 6.
3 and 6.
Think about that game, though. And again, North Carolina kind of shot themselves in the foot. But
yeah, it was not a well-executed game for sure. But that's all the time we've got on this edition of Gainesville Game Day. We'd like to thank Gatorland Toyota for making it all possible. For Chelsea Brown, for Pat Dooley, I'm Phil Byrne. We'll see you next week.
For those that make it out to the Florida-Georgia game each and every year, you know that it's an annual tradition for some. Everyone's got a story to share. For those that make it an annual tradition, though, sometimes the way they make it up to Jacksonville can actually be more interesting than the game itself. Who needs roads to get to the game when you've got the river?
For probably about 15 years we've been in the arena now, and it's been a great experience every year. It's all our friends. We hang out, we do a lot of partying, and what's nice is you come in on Thursday and you hang out till Sunday, so it's not like a lot of folks that drive in on Saturday for the game and they leave. We don't deal with traffic. You come in, you party for 3 days. Tonight's Halloween. We're going to get in our costumes. We're going to party tonight, so it's a great event. We tailgate every week in Gainesville when the games are there, but this is special.
And while the Gators might be underdogs on Saturday, they certainly own the dock.
We happen to have on a dock that's predominantly the Gators, so it's all good. You can see we got our tent, we got our lights. Steve's got his boat over here. We're all set up. He usually wins the best boat decoration every year, so it's pretty cool.
And Jacksonville has really started to come alive. The town is going crazy right now. Florida-Georgia line is actually in town. How ironic is that to kick off Florida-Georgia weekend here? The boat's behind me. These people are about ready to have a great time for Halloween weekend and all the festivities that are going to conclude. Hey, we're not done here from Jacksonville. Coming up in sports, we'll have a full breakdown of what to expect from the game itself. The Bulldogs will be without Todd Gurley for this one. Will that make things any bit easier for the Gators? We'll certainly find out. But reporting live from the Metro Park Marina here in Jacksonville, Phil Byrne, GTN News. It might not be the immovable object versus the unstoppable force, but you'd be hard-pressed to find a better strength on strength this bowl season than when East Carolina's passing game matches up against Florida's secondary. But you also got to believe that new head coach Jim McElwain of the Florida Gators, who again won't coach in this game, that'll be interim coach DJ Durkin, will be looking over that East Carolina sideline with some envious eyes on ECU quarterback Shane Carden. The senior quarterback has thrown for more than 4,300 yards and 28 touchdowns this season. If McElwain can get production like that from a future QB at Florida, the Gators will certainly be living good. And Carden's gone up against some decent out-of-conference competition this season too, putting up good numbers against North Carolina, South Carolina, and Virginia Tech. But as good as that competition might be for an ECU team, they've never seen athletes like Dante Fowler and Vernon Hargraves that the Gators can offer. So less than a day and a half away from this game getting going here in Birmingham. The city is starting to liven up. We'll have some pep rallies in town. That'll be fun. I'm sure Albert and Alberta will be on hand for the Gators and the Florida Marching Band and all that stuff. And also some press conference. Find out what DJ Durkin has to say going into his final game as a Gators assistant coach, and the players, with so much on the line, with some players playing in their final game for now. But outside the SEC offices in downtown Birmingham, I'm Phil Byrne. Back to you in the studio. The Hawthorne Hornets ran into a proverbial hornet's nest down here in Lakeland. If I were to guess what the crowd was like, I would probably say it was 80-20 sort of ratio in favor of Chipley. And then you add in the fact that they have a very talented player in Trent Forrest, who, when the first half was over with, he had 14 points. Hawthorne had just 13 points. Tail of the tape had Forrest being 4 inches taller than Hawthorne's biggest player in 6'1", Keldrick Bradley, and the Hawthorne Hornets just couldn't go down low. When you add in the fact that they weren't getting the shots to fall in the first half either, I hate to say it, but this game almost seemed like it was over with at the beginning of the second quarter. So now Hawthorne will finish the season in second place in Class 1A, and a disappointing finish for seniors Montavious McKinnon and Keldrick Bradley, and of course their head coach Greg Bowie. But come on back later in sports and we'll have some player reaction following this disappointing loss. A 69-40 loss by Hawthorne in the hands of Chipley here in the Class 1A state championship game. Reporting from Lakeland, I'm Phil Byrne. Back to you in the studio.
To get from this to this, the hours and work begin well before game day. Brian Flood is with the University Athletic Association and is in charge of game day operations.
What can we do here at the Swamp to make a game day experience better for fans, for people visiting teams coming into our stadium?
The experience that fans receive at the Swamp is second to none in college athletics, but far too often the 90,000 strong sitting in the stands take for granted the hours and workforce required to make the Swamp, well, the Swamp.
We'll get in Saturday morning about 7:30. And there'd be a bunch of people that are here before that, 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning, when you think about some of the catering staff and TV crews and so forth. 7:30 in the morning, probably till about 5:30, 6 o'clock at night.
To get everything in place, it's a long day for a cast of thousands.
Then there's about 2,200 working credentials. So that's everything from the, obviously the two teams have some credentials that they use on the sideline and bench credentials and so forth, but then you have concession staff, which is a big number of credentials. You think about all the concession stands in the stadium, and they each have, X number of workers in each one. They all have a past, credential working the game.
The game day operations crew oversees more than just the setup and teardown on game day. Flood plays a vital role once the ball is kicked off and makes sure that everything can go smoothly, even when the unthinkable happens, like a rained-out Idaho game in 2014.
And we see like another storm starting to brew, like a little isolated thunderstorm, and it's got lightning in it, and sure enough, lightning strike at like 6.7 miles or 8 miles, whatever, within our radius. And so I have to run out to Matt Moore, was a referee from the SEC that night, and Matt, sorry, we got to bang it right now. And so we're back in, and in the night, the athletic directors of the conference office and the head coaches just made the decision. It was probably, and the university presidents were involved as well at that point. At the end of the day, it just wasn't happening that night, and it was a really unique experience for everybody involved.
But the Swamp is only as good as the people inside of it. Flood and his crew ask for feedback.
Make sure everybody's happy, and we take, we love getting feedback from fans, whether it's email or phone calls, and following up. Try to make a positive experience when they're here.
The swamp may be where only Gators get out alive, but the tireless work of thousands helps make it the heartbeat of the Gator Nation. Phil Byrne, GTN News.